What's going on, reefers? Blaine here. In today's video, we are back in the retail store, and it has been quite some time since we have recently talked about the waterfall tank that greets you immediately as soon as you walk into Top Shelf Aquatics. It's actually been about 6 months since we last talked about this tank, so I wanted to give you all an update of what's been going on, some of the numbers that we're trying to get in this system, some of the new things we're trying to work on, and also give you an update on the livestock, the plants, the mangrove, all those good things. Let's actually start off from the top and work our way down. So starting off with the mangrove, I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little disappointed with the growth on the mangrove. I think it's for one reason actually, and I think that's something I thought about this morning on my drive over here. I've been kind of thinking to myself, why aren't we getting such great growth from our mangrove, right? So I honestly think that we're kind of getting it in too small of a space. The area where the roots can grow, I don't think it's got the chance to really push its roots out and really send off some nice running roots and also send down some aerial roots. So I think we're kind of hindering the growth opportunity for this plant. Originally, we had a nice extra branch on this too. Sadly, when you do a lot of transfers with mangroves, it can be tough on them. It can be pretty hard for them to make that transition good. So we ended up losing a little bit of those. We lost some of the leaves, but we're seeing that these leaves here up top are super green and super healthy, so it's not like the tree isn't doing well. One of the best ways to check if your mangrove's actually happy is to give it a little squish. If the base of it or the trunk of it, because it is a tree, if the trunk of it is nice and squishy, you know you're heading in the wrong direction. So the tree is nice and firm, and we're actually seeing kind of on the bottom side, it's starting to bark up, which is pretty cool. This is an older mangrove. Older in the sense of it's about 2 years old at this point. So that's one thing I wanted to update you guys on was the mangrove itself. We're not getting a ton of great growth from it, but we're gonna kind of hold steady and see if we can get some good growth here in the near future. The air plants are doing super well. We're constantly misting them every single day here at TSA, and we're using water from a freshwater tank at Kevin's house, and they seem to be doing really good. We're seeing a lot of good growth from them. Some of are budding and showing some little babies, but overall, they're doing super well. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about, and I thought was really interesting, was the waterfall. This was something you guys had concerns about. I think we all had concerns about, honestly, was the waterfall. See, the waterfall is kind of a difficult thing to work with. I think it's a really cool element. It adds some amazing dynamic movement of water, just different kind of style of a reef tank in general. I personally have never seen a saltwater waterfall tank in my entire hobby, an entire career of keeping saltwater tanks. So this is something truly special, but I think it's something that comes with a little bit of extra work. Now, we have to constantly have people get in here, the retail staff get in and do some manual scrubbing on the saltwater waterfalls because the algae's growing up it. It's hard for any of the cleanup crew to make its way up. As you guys have seen in some of our other scapes, the scape in the 15-gallon, the scape here, it's a little difficult for the cleanup crew to really make its way up to this higher section of rockwork. Kind of have to place up the cleanup crew on these branches and arms, so it can be a little bit of tedious work. So we have to do a lot of scrubbing ourselves to keep this thing clean. Ultimately, we are one of the main herbivores in our reef tanks. It's something I've said before, something I'm gonna harp on again and again in every video when I talk about cleanup crew, cleaning your system. You need to do the work before your cleanup crew can really polish it off. You know, if you have hair algae, bryopsis, these longer algae, they can get really thick and troublesome for your cleanup crew, your tangs. Now, if you're not scrubbing it yourself, it's gonna be hard for your cleanup crew to get down to the base of the rock and really work its way through. So overall though, the waterfall, really, really cool element. The rockscape itself might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's really dynamic and really interesting. Cool to see a waterfall in this system. But now let's get to the good stuff. Let's start talking about the corals. Let's talk about the fish. Now we'll jump right into the fish first. The storm clowns are doing extremely well. They've ended up taking on to this red Donnie right here in the front. They've made that the host for them. And so they've been hanging out in that. They also hang out in this Diceras blade down at the bottom, which is pretty cool. But overall, the clownfish have been pretty good citizens here in this system. Obviously, they're not working fish, but they're really, really cool. I love the storm clowns. They're ultimately my favorite morph of the captive bred clowns that we've made here. There are so many different styles and ways to keep clownfish, but I love the storm clowns, especially the black and white ones. They look really nice, like little cows running around in the tank, so I ultimately really love these guys. Now for the tangs in the tank, we've got the Tamini tang, and we also have a purple tang. Originally, we were kind of concerned about the purple tang, his attitude and how he would be towards the other fish. He's definitely the king of the tank, and as he's growing out, we're gonna probably have to shift him out here at some point once he gets too big, but this is a 50-gallon display. He's working pretty well in the tank, and he's helping keeping things nice and clean. Outside of those groups of fish, we also have a basslet that's in here and some other fish, but overall the fish are doing well. They're growing, they're getting bigger, and they seem to be playing well with each other. Originally, the Tamini and the purple tang did not like each other. It was kind of a battle for ultimate control here in the tank, but the purple tang's really starting to kind of become king in the system, and so ultimately the Tamini tang bowed down to him and allowed him to be the king of the tank. But that's pretty much it when it comes to an update on the fish. Now the corals are really starting to grow in. Obviously, it's been 6 months since you guys have last seen this tank, so a lot of growth in the zoas, the chalices. We've added some new things here and there. We filled in some spaces. One thing I have noticed is the pectinias in the back are starting to battle each other quite a bit, so we may have to do some shifting around when it comes to those corals, but they seem to be doing pretty well. The zoas up top, interesting to see how they're doing. I think ultimately some of them are doing really well up here up top, and some of them are struggling a little bit. So this is kind of the name of the game when it comes to reef keeping. You have to kind of shift things around, move them if they're not doing good enough, and then try to find the proper placement for them. As for some of my personal favorites when it comes to the corals here in this system, I love the wide range of plates we've ended up putting in this tank. We've definitely done a lot more aquaculture efforts when it comes to plates here at TSA. We've also got a really cool mixture of chalices. As you guys know, we have some really nice chalices here at TSA. The Cosmic Candy Bounce, we've got the Rajan Pajamas, there's a nice big Space Invader in the back. There's a ton of really cool corals, but what's really cool about this system is it's more of a mixed reef tank, right? We've got some soft corals in here, and then we've got LPS in here. So ultimately making a mixed reef tank, but really focusing in on more of a soft coral and LPS coral based system. Right up at the top, recently added in, is a nice glowworm toadstool. I really like any toadstool in a tank. Hopefully at some point, we'll do a tank tour at my tank at home, and that is mainly soft corals because I love my toadstools. I've got a wide range of toadstools in my system. Be sure to drop a comment below if you guys want to see my tank and do a tank tour at my tank at home. But I'm really excited to see we ended up adding in a sarcophyton. I love my toadstools, so was a big fan of that. I personally think it should have been a little bit lower in the system so it could really reach out all of its polyps. But really enjoying that. Also too, a ton of the Bernardipora too, the short tentacle ganies, and then there's some mixtures of hammers, kryptonite candy canes. There's just a really wide range of corals in here. Another really cool coral that I like in this system is the sun corals. The reason I like it so much for this tank in particular is with all the shaded areas. And also what we could have done, but we ended up not doing, was you could have hang it upside down. That's kind of where they're naturally found in the environment, is kind of hanging on overhangs, things like that, pilings, all kinds of different things. But really like to see those doing well in the back. We're doing some spot feeding on those with mysis, and also talking about feedings. Let's talk about what we're feeding the tank. As for feeding the system, we're feeding the green seaweed from the Reef Genetics line. Only a little bit in here because we only have the 2 tangs and we ultimately want to make them do the work, so we don't want to give them too many snacks. And then also we have the mysis that we're feeding all of the other systems here at TSA, the PE mysis, so that's the other thing we're feeding. And then we're feeding the coral food, the slurry that we make over in the farm. There's a mixture of aminos, Reef Genetics phytoplankton, either the reef roids, benepets, whatever it may be. Because of the numbers, we'll utilize different kind of coral food, but that's pretty much what we're doing for the coral feeding here in this system. Now getting into the equipment side of things, we've got these Kessel track lights up above right now, and currently the spectrum that we're sitting on and the intensity we have, we're thinking about changing that up. I was just talking with Evan over in the farm. Him and Kevin have a couple projects they want to work on here in this system, and ultimately I think the lighting is one of the biggest ones. Flow, obviously, We've pretty much got that handled with all the different, wave box setup and everything happening. I think we really like where the flow is at, but the lighting, we're kind of trying to tweak around with that. It's interesting too though, because as we talked about earlier, we have the plants, we have the mangrove, so we're trying to get a more white full light spectrum for it so that it can get that natural sunlight that it needs, but also we're trying not to overdo it for the corals because we like to run our blues here at TSA, and we see that they do a lot better with that kind of spectrum intensity. So it's kind of that double-edged sword, right? Trying to maintain the health of these plants. Let's go ahead and get into the numbers now and start talking about what kind of numbers this tank has been having and what numbers we're also shooting for ultimately. Now for the salinity, we're going for our average salinity of 1.02633. Now for our alkalinity, we're shooting for exactly what we're shooting for in the farm. We're shooting for 8.9 DKH. It's usually a little bit higher though sometimes, around 8.6 to 9.1. It's higher normally after a water change, so we rarely have to dose, which is pretty nice. Our calcium is 450 to 475. We ultimately are targeting 435, but the salt mix is kind of higher, so we leave it there and kind of just let it do its thing. Magnesium is at 1350, and then for our phosphates, we have it 0.09 to 0.14 is kind of the range we have. It's a higher target range though because it's an LPS dominated system. As for the nitrates, we're anywhere from 5 to 10 ppm. For maintenance on this system, the maintenance is pretty easy. We're not really dosing anything in this tank as of right now. We're just doing water changes and we're just making sure that everything's topped off with the ATO. Keeping it nice and simple, doing the water changes weekly, and then also scrubbing down that waterfall, just like I talked about earlier. The cleanup crew, we're maintaining a wide range of cleanup crew inside this tank. We've got snails, we've got conchs, we've got sand sifting stars. We've got a wide range of cleanup crew, and I think it's an important thing to have a wide range of cleanup crew in all of your reef tanks at home because every single snail, crab, starfish, they all have different roles, right? And they're gonna go after different things in your reef tank. So ultimately, it's gonna be really nice to kind of have a wide range. Now, when it comes to some of the problems in this reef tank, we have one in particular that came up and we tried to handle right away and nip it in the butt, and that's dinos. Now, we have done a video on dinos in the past. If you haven't checked that out, be sure to check that one out. But dealing with dinos in this tank was pretty interesting because trying to get something to cover this entire tank while also cutting a nice little hole so the mangrove can keep getting light was pretty interesting to try and set up and get done. I talked about it with someone yesterday, but dinos have become much more reoccurring here in the hobby in the past 5 to 10 years. When I was reefing 20 plus years ago, dinos really never were a thing. I think that also contributes to the fact that we use more dry rock. We try to keep things much more sterile, whereas back then we were throwing in live rock from the ocean, sand from the ocean, all kinds of crazy things. And we didn't seem to deal with a lot of dinos in our reef tanks. Now, we ended up dealing with dinos in this tank. We dealt with it, nipped it in the butt. But the next one that's been interesting to see is we have some clove polyps, the blue cloves, that have popped up on the top part of the rockwork. Now, if you guys have ever dealt with these blue clove polyps, they can be kind of a menace. They can kind of take over a tank, doing a couple different things to try and deal with these, but ultimately, those are pretty much the two biggest issues we've dealt with in this tank. And I'm curious to hear down in the comments below if you guys are dealing with dinos right now, or if you've dealt with any kind of issues like that before. What are the current issues you're dealing with in your reef tanks? It's been 6 months since you guys have seen this tank last, and it's pretty cool to see the transition of this system. It's nice also to see that the rock is really starting to mature. We're starting to see a lot more coralline growing all over the rockscape. But overall though, really excited to see how this tank has grown because it's been quite some time since we shared it here on the channel. And I thought it was overdue of getting an update. But I want to hear down in the comments below what your guys' favorite part of this system is, whether it be the rockscape, the corals, the fish. I'm really curious to hear from you all. If you guys have hung out throughout the course of this video, awesome to get an update on one of the TSA retail systems. We've got another one here in the retail store that we're getting ready to set up here soon, so stay tuned for that video. If you guys have hung out all the way till the end, I want to say thank you very much. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future uploads.